Plan B with Sarina Bellissimo. The biggest stars, gossip, events, and the biggest tunes. Plan B, your weekend fix.
Spin 103.8.
Luke Treadaway, welcome to Plan B.
Thank you for having me.
What an incredible story this is. As an actor, you're so used to telling other people's stories, but what's it like to tell a recent story and, on top of that, a story of someone who's actually in the room, there present while you're filming?
It was a gift of a part to get, just because the range of things that happens in it, really, taking James, the character of James, and yeah, he is a real person, but for me, I had to sort of also make sure it was me creating a character as well. But it was going from him being homeless and trying to get off heroin, and then the way that it kind of carries on and goes through and eventually ends up being quite uplifting and positive. It was just an amazing journey to go on. Normally when you play a real person, it might have happened years before, and it might be a historical figure from 400 years ago.
Yeah.
But then to be playing someone who was stood in that doorway or busking on that street corner literally 5 years ago, and then suddenly you're recreating it with the same cat he had on his shoulder then on your shoulders now, it was quite sort of meta and sort of weird blurring of reality. But James was so wonderful to have around, and he was so helpful to all of us, I think, and not just me, but just for the whole crew and the whole and the director and everyone. To have him there was a sort of reminder of like the fact that there's a real human being at the heart of this story, and I think that's what the strength of the story is, that it sort of educates people and hopefully opens their eyes to seeing homeless people not just as another homeless person, but as a real person with a name and with a family that, you know, maybe there's been things that have been a struggle there or whatever.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what this story tells us is that it really could be any of us going through what James actually went through. Yeah,
I think that was what was so powerful to me when I was kind of doing research beforehand, was meeting and talking to people and James as well, and realising how all of us are only a couple of, you know, this sort of thing of ending up on the streets. People often might just think that it's through some fault of their own, or that they've got some addiction and therefore that's why they're there. But actually, it could happen to any of us, and people that don't have a strong support network, it can happen so easily that you can fall through the cracks and find yourself just sort of feeling like you're outside of society, really, and completely invisible to anyone else.
In researching this role, it wasn't enough for you to just chat to James. You actually decided to go spend a night on the streets. When you were actually in the midst of it all, what was going through your mind? I
would have felt like a complete charlatan, basically, if I'd been spending 7 weeks pretending to be someone who's lived on the streets. If I'd never done it, I wouldn't really be able to sort of turn up to work. I also knew that I wouldn't fully understand at all what it would be like to live for years on and off the streets, but I knew I would get a taste, or I knew I would learn something, so I just felt like it was absolutely my duty to do it. And yeah, James was really helpful. He took me out around Soho to different places that he'd have gone busking, and he would tell me how he would have approached a table of people and what he'd have said, and then I would have gone up and said that and played them a song, and sometimes they'd have given me some money and sometimes they wouldn't, and just to get the full range of that, and sitting for an hour outside Leicester Square Tube singing your heart out and no one giving you anything, and just knowing what that's like was a real eye-opener. And then settling down on a bit of cardboard and sleeping out around Soho was, it was really just very useful and very hard to realise that when I was lying there at 3 a.m. and it was raining and it was horrible, and realising that I was very, very lucky because I had a house to go back to the next night, and feeling incredibly sorry for people who don't have that. And I think if everyone did that one night, then I think the world would somehow find a way to solve its homeless problem, because I think once you've done it, you realise how hard it is.
Now, look, I'm not saying that acting is as tough as being homeless, but it is a tough...
It certainly isn't.
No, but it is a tough career you've chosen. How do you get through the knockbacks, the auditions, and the really quiet times?
I think, anyone doing a profession that they love doing is quite rare, and it's also really lucky, and I've never thought for a second that the world owes me anything, and I think in actual fact I've always sort of had this thing in my head of, you know, being lucky enough to dress up and play make-believe for a living and doing something I love, to put a roof over my head. It almost feels like it's natural to have a few, you know, sometimes where it is, you know, you don't know what's coming next, or but you know, my not knowing what's coming next is not a very hard place to be compared to what a lot of people are going through in the world. So you know, it's fine.
It's put into context, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's next for you, Luke?
Tomorrow, Raymond Briggs' animated film Ethel and Ernest comes out with Jim Broadbent and Brenda Blethyn, which give amazing performances in that. It's beautiful animation. And then Fortitude, the second series of Fortitude, comes out in January on Sky Atlantic.
Amazing. Well, listen, good luck with all of that, and thanks for bringing James's story to the big screen.
Thank you.
Plan B with Sarina Bellissimo. The biggest stars, gossip, events, and the biggest tunes. Plan B, your weekend fix.
Spin 1038.